If you were to ask me who my favorite media analysis YouTuber is, my answer is, has always been, and will likely always be, James Schaffrillas, or as he's known online, Schaffrillas Productions. In fact, not only is he my favorite YouTuber of his niche, he's also my second favorite YouTuber of all time, second only to the legendary late Technoblade. I digress, back to James. If you don't know, he's a YouTuber who makes videos analyzing the narratives, characters, themes, and other related aspects of various movies, TV shows, games, you name it. Granted, his analysis isn't always 100% spot on, but no one's is. And I'm always excited to put on a new Schaffrillas video or even rewatch his older videos because I just know he has something insightful and entertaining to say in every single one. There's passion behind everything he makes, and I believe the absolute culmination of this passion is his 1 million subscriber 1.22 million subscriber special, Why Tamatoa is My Favorite Character Ever. I just call it the Tamatoa special for short, released on the 6th of August 2021, and clocking in at almost 1 hour and 22 minutes, wonder if that's intentional. This special is jam-packed with a fun, overarching meta-narrative, hilarious comedy, fantastic editing, and of course, incredible analysis from James about why Tamatoa from the Disney movie Moana is indeed his favorite character ever. I bet you wouldn't have figured that out from the title, and I'm sure you're thanking me for making it clear. So yeah, it's a really damn good special and is held up to this day. I'm not saying it would unironically be a top-tier masterpiece of a movie if it was an actual official film, but for what it is, it really works. It takes every aspect of what makes James's content so entertaining and brilliant and amplifies those aspects to their highest possible extremes. In my opinion, this makes it the Magnum Opus of Schaffrillas Productions. Now for the lore behind this video, the one you're watching at this very moment. Shortly after the special first released, some legend put it on Letterboxd. Yeah, really. So then I decided to log on to my Letterboxd account, which I had used in the past to review the Mitchells vs. the Machines and literally not a single other movie, and I went over to the Tamatoa special and wrote a 75-ish% ironic review calling it the greatest piece of art ever made. And then, probably a day later if I'm remembering correctly, Letterboxd took the Tamatoa special off the site for, you know, not officially being a movie. But you know what? I say it's a movie, and it deserves to be on Letterboxd, goddammit. If the Tamatoa special has 1 million fans, I'm one of them. If the Tamatoa special has 5 fans, I'm one of them. If the Tamatoa special has 1 fan, that one is me. If the Tamatoa special has no fans, I'm no longer alive. If the entire world is against the Tamatoa special, I'm against the entire— So anyway, the special was unjustly removed from Letterboxd, and with it went my sacred review, which I had foolishly failed to copy anywhere else. The worst part was, I had been planning to adopt the review into script form and make a haha funny joke video about the Tamatoa special, and now it would have to start from scratch. Instead of doing that, I simply chose to do nothing at all, and for the next year and a half, my review and all my plans for the video were lost to the sands of time. Until earlier this year on James's birthday when I decided to randomly check and see if the Wayback Machine could recover my review. Lo and behold, it could. And that sure made me feel like a f***ing idiot for not trying earlier, but oh well. At least I have it, and now all of you can see what I had to say about the Tamatoa special upon its premiere. It'll be in the Google Doc linked in the description. I guess you could say that was birthday magic at work. Originally though, when I first recovered that review, I still wasn't going to revive my plans to adapt it into a video, mainly because I had much bigger projects on my mind, and also because the special had been out for way too long for a video on it to be anywhere near relevant at this point. I only started scripting this video around the beginning of February in the wake of an absolute tragedy which ultimately drove me to do so. Trigger warning for this part, as I will be mentioning a car crash and the deaths of 2 people, so if you're sensitive to those topics, definitely skip forward. I did include chapters in this video so you know where to jump to. I'll try to keep the description of the tragedy as short and concise as I can, because I want this video to be more of a commemoration than an obituary, but basically, on the 29th of January this year, James Schaffrillas, his brother Patrick Schaffrillas, and their close friend Chris Schaefer got into a car crash, which killed Patrick and Chris, as well as hospitalizing James, although he has been physically recovering ever since. The 3 of them collectively made up what is known to the internet as Schaffrillas Productions. Yes, it is James's channel and he's always been the primary creative mind behind his videos, but Patrick and Chris were massive influences and frequently showed up to help out, in addition to being James's best friends. Hell, Schaffrillas is a combination of the surnames Schaffrillas and Schaefer. Both of them had such a charming repertoire with James in his videos, and were incredible people in their own right, and it pains me to know they've passed away when they had so much more to do and so many more lives to change. And yes, they did both have roles in the Tamatoa special, especially Patrick, who served as the main antagonist of the story, and that's the ultimate reason why I'm making this video. To pay respect to these two legends who helped make it such a magnum opus in the first place. A magnum opus which I feel is a lot more profound in its overarching themes and nature than I originally gave it credit for. So without further ado, let's talk about what makes this special so f***ing great. First, we have the story, which is actually pretty simple for a meta-narrative. The premise is that the events of the special take place in the same timeline as Moana, just in modern day. In order to protect her heart, Te Fiti has divided it into pieces and given it to a mysterious, elusive group of protectors known as the Guardians of the Heart Pieces and top-tier YouTubers, abbreviated as Goth Patty. Their mission is to defend the heart pieces from Oscar from the DreamWorks movie Shark Tale, who wants to use them to rule the world. They have also been assigned to wait for the fabled Chosen One to emerge so they can be given the heart pieces and reassemble them to defeat Oscar and restore peace to the world once and for all. The funniest part to me is that technically, you can just imagine this as canon to both Moana and Shark Tale, with the events of both movies simply being historical. From my understanding, there isn't anything in them that would contradict the canonicity of this special. Anyway, Goth Patty suspects James to be the Chosen One, so they send him a letter through Patrick, also known as Pappy G, inviting him to complete a bunch of challenges to prove himself and earn the heart pieces. From there, he travels to each of the Goth Patty members, aided by his close friend and editor William, also known as Space Tree Studios. These Goth Patty members are all YouTubers in the same general sphere as James, so they agree to mold all their challenges around the one thing he claims to be good at, talking about Tamatoa. Unfortunately, Oscar is manipulating Patrick from the sidelines, exploiting his jealousy toward his brother over his far superior subscriber count and online presence to drive him to compete against James in the race to achieve all the heart pieces. Patrick is able to use the immense knowledge of Tamatoa he's learned from James over the years to deceive Goth Patty into believing he's the actual Chosen One. And he's also helped by William because William simply thought it would be funny to give them both maps to all the Goth Patty members. From there, James is forced to use the full extent of his passion and energy to analyze Tamatoa and reach the finish line before his brother so he can save the world from Oscar's evil influence, and more shenanigans ensue. Given how much time I just spent explaining that story, you may think I was wrong when I said it was simple, but honestly, the basic premise still isn't that complicated, especially by YouTuber meta-narrative standards. I can tell you all the meta shit I used to make was more confusing and less straightforward than this by a long shot. At the very least, it's about as straightforward as many official movies are, and overall it's very easy to follow and compelling. Throughout various rewatches, I've always been engaged at every point in the video, and I've never felt like the story slows down, because even when the overarching narrative takes a backseat so James can analyze Tamatoa, there's still an underlying sense of urgency knowing he has limited time while Patrick gets closer and closer to beating him. What's also impressive is that during my first watch of the special, I remember feeling this sense of urgency even before Oscar is revealed to be manipulating Patrick from behind the scenes. Probably because the mystery surrounding Goth Patty still raise tension until then and make the viewer suspect something greater is at play before the curtain is actually lifted. Speaking of those mysteries, or technically lack thereof in a sense, let's talk about Goth Patty. I don't actually have that much to say about Goth Patty. Well, I do, but relative to some of the other stuff I'm going to talk about in this video, I don't. But what I do have to say is positive, because they are very well implemented. Yes, them being part of the story was primarily done to allow all the YouTubers James is friends with to cameo in the special, but I don't really have a problem with that because you can tell they each genuinely wanted to add something with their presence and cared about the special they were in. Sometimes these YouTubers also give James challenges that directly relate with their own content. For example, Sideways, who makes videos analyzing music, tasked James with describing the musical genius of Tamatoa's villain song, Shiny. Goth Patty is also both shrouded in mystery, at least at the beginning, and incredibly funny. All the YouTubers who show up have what are, in my opinion, hilarious interactions with James, but at the same time, both he and the viewer start to raise their eyebrows at what exactly is going on with their organization. Every single member of Goth Patty seen in the special is apparently the third highest ranking member, which both serves as a funny gag because of how James reacts to learning this about everyone he meets over and over again, and an interesting mystery for the audience who is left to ponder what's really going on. In the end, we don't really learn the answer to any of the greater questions involving Goth Patty, and I think we're supposed to take away that they're just comically disorganized and incompetent, as the special seeks to subvert the idea of anything more complex going on behind the scenes. For example, the special satirizes the idea of a twist villain as James is temporarily deceived into thinking William may be one, only for that to then be revealed as just another ploy by Patrick to steal Te Fiti's heart. I will admit, it's a little disappointing that the Goth Patty mysteries don't really amount to anything, but if they were further explored, that probably would have taken away from the central story of the race between James and Patrick, so this was ultimately for the best. Besides, Goth Patty is still funny and a great aspect of the narrative as it stands. In fact, let me just take a brief detour here and say that the special is really f***ing funny in general. It relies a lot on quirky interactions between the characters built on situational comedy and fun references which Schaffrillas fans will be able to get. This style of humor doesn't always work and can often come across as forced in media that is more blatantly corporate in nature, but with something as genuine and heartfelt as this special, which was ultimately the work of a bunch of people who just wanted to have fun on the internet and tell a story that meant a lot to them, it really shines here, and it never fails to make me laugh on rewatch. Now, here's where we get to my favorite part of the special, the theme. Both the theme James discusses while talking about Tamatoa to 24 frames of Nick, the final Goth Patty member, and the underlying theme of the meta-narrative outside of the analysis segments. Except, actually, they're the same theme, because the theme James analyzes within Moana directly parallels the theme involving him and Patrick in a really clever way. To first identify this theme, I'll describe it as it's laid out by James himself in that specific analysis segment within the special. I'm not going to go into as much detail as he does, and I recommend simply watching the special for yourself for a better idea, but to summarize, the message of Moana he touches upon is that you should embrace who you are on the inside and who you choose to be in spite of what the rest of society thinks of you, which is exemplified by the primary protagonist Moana, as well as the secondary protagonist Maui after he completes his character arc in the movie. Before he completes that arc, however, Maui is almost entirely concerned with what everyone else thinks of him, conflating his self-worth with his hook, the ultimate symbol of his status as a demigod. He rejects the human part of his soul because it's the part his own parents rejected and leans into his god side because he feels like he can only really matter to people if they see him as an all-powerful being. Of course, with help from Moana, Maui eventually learns to embrace who he really is and disregard society's expectations from him. But nonetheless, he at the beginning of the story represents the anti-theme, and as James expertly points out, Tamatoa also represents this same anti-theme taken to its logical extreme. Tamatoa isn't concerned whatsoever about the fact that on the inside he's nothing more than a vain, selfish bully, or if he is, he certainly doesn't show it. All he seems to care about is how much wealth he can amass and how glorious he can look on the outside, and as such, he's the representation of a worst-case Maui, a version of him who not only never learns the errors of his mindset, but continuously refuses to even try. The only difference between Maui and Tamatoa is that one of them is genuinely a good person at heart and is able to learn to appreciate himself on the inside, whereas Tamatoa is a complete monster utterly detached from the concept of empathy and morality. He quite literally has nothing left but what he is on the outside, which makes him the perfect representation of the antithesis to Moana's primary message. So that's the central theme of Moana as is described by James. However, it's also the underlying theme of the meta-narrative and particularly the character arcs of James and Patrick. What's important to understand here is that Patrick is more or less a direct parallel of Maui. While Maui attaches his self-worth to the respect and adoration of the Polynesian people, Patrick attaches his self-worth to his subscriber count, which represents roughly the same thing. He feels jealous of his brother for his more popular YouTube channel, and mopes over the fact that by comparison he has virtually nothing. He has trouble accepting that he's special for who he is on the inside, even though James appreciates him, something he underestimates the importance of at first. The fact that the special starts off by introducing Patrick before James after the storybook opening is important as it sets up the internal conflict for him to overcome. Patrick, who narrates the opening of the special, sets himself up as a brave hero whose destiny it is to restore balance to the world by retrieving Te Fiti's heart. He also portrays a myriad of challenges he went through to achieve it. However, when he finally reaches the fabled tower where the heart supposedly is, he instead finds salty DK Dan, the third highest ranking member of Goth Patty, which I assure you is a very unique achievement. There, Salty shatters all of Patrick's hopes and dreams by telling him that not only has the heart actually been split into 12 pieces protected by different Goth Patty members, but also that the pieces aren't even for him, rather for the real chosen one, supposedly his brother James. At this point in the special, Patrick clearly wants to be a hero out of a longing for recognition and glory, similarly to how Maui did when he stole the heart in Moana. He sees this quest as his escape from what he believes to be a mediocre existence, so of course he ends up being manipulated by Oscar into competing with James. This means a lot to him, and it's easy to see how Oscar takes advantage of that. The thing is, and mind you this is just my interpretation, I think that in the lore of this meta-narrative, James may actually have contributed to Patrick's mindset, albeit unintentionally. By constantly idolizing Tamatoa in front of him when Tamatoa represents the dangerous anti-theme I previously described, James may have caused Patrick to see this anti-theme as the truth and apply it to himself. leading him to the position he's in at the start of the special. Obviously, this is just in the context of the narrative and not speculation about anything that happened in real life, because if it was, that would be ridiculous and quite frankly inappropriate, and it's also just my interpretation as it's never made explicitly clear in the special, so do take it with a grain of salt. I also believe James realizes how much his constant idolization of Tamatoa has negatively impacted Patrick and driven him into the mindset he's in throughout most of the special. When he finishes analyzing Tamatoa thematically and realizes he's not really deserving of being worshipped or praised because at the end of the day he's just a selfish, greedy bottom feeder, it's also possible that he blames himself for how this misplaced worship has affected Patrick, and if my interpretation is correct, this works really well with one of my favorite scenes in the whole special. In this scene, James and Patrick reconvene at their house and lament on how pointless this whole competition was and how it's only served to drive them apart when they should have been united as brothers. Sure, you could argue this isn't really genuine on Patrick's part because he's just waiting for an opportunity to steal the heart and give it to Oscar, but I'd actually disagree, at least to an extent. Although Patrick may still be deceiving James at this point, I don't think his apathy toward the situation is as much of a front as he wants James to believe, mainly because of how he reacts when Oscar reveals his true plans to destroy the world and then rule it. When Patrick reacts negatively to this revelation, Oscar offers him a subscriber boost right before he plans to destroy the world to keep him just satisfied enough to be complacent. And although he accepts this, he's not at all excited about it. Even though he's finally been promised what he's wanted this whole time, he realizes that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. If the whole world is gone, including everything he cares about, subscribers are meaningless, and in truth, they always were. Patrick is left with the crushing realization that everything he's done up until this point was in pursuit of an empty victory, one that will leave him as a hollow shell of his former self, just like Tamatoa. Similarly, James is left lamenting over how he spent so much time worshipping this ultimately selfish and hollow being and letting the effects of that worship drive his brother to a similar position. And thus the two of them, plus William because he's also in this scene, remain in the Fireless household, unsure of what to do next as it seems like all hope is lost. And that's where Chris comes in. Hell yeah, baby. You've likely noticed that although he's one of the people I dedicated this video to, I've neglected to talk about Chris much in relation to the special. And the reason why is because he legitimately does not show up until about an hour in while James, Patrick, and William are at their lowest points. It's a shame he doesn't have a bigger presence in the special since I wish I could say more about him, but as is, he still serves an important role as a motivator to James. While James laments over how Tamatoa is nothing but a self-obsessed, vain piece of shit whose only purpose is to be an obstacle for Moana and Maui, Chris points out that fans can interpret media however they want and that he can imagine Tamatoa in a context that would make him a hero. Because ultimately, it is what James thinks on the inside about Tamatoa that matters, not what society expects him to think about Tamatoa. At the same time, this pep talk vindicates Patrick. James, by my interpretation, feels guilty over driving Patrick to extreme jealousy through his Tamatoa worship and therefore sees Patrick as a reflection of Tamatoa. If Tamatoa can be the hero in James's mind, surely there's still hope that Patrick can be one too by undergoing the same transformation Maui does over the course of Moana. Simultaneously, Patrick realizes this too, now fully understanding how much the person he truly is matters compared to something as meaningless as his subscriber count. In different ways, Chris helps deliver the theme of embracing who you are on the inside to the two brothers, and as these revelations strike them and James's editors and followers cheer them on, they finally muster the resolve to set aside their differences and reconcile, pledging to take down Oscar before he destroys everything. And now we get to talk about the absolutely awe-inducing final battle of the Tamatoa special, where James, Patrick, William, Chris, all their allies, and most importantly Tamatoa himself, bring the fight to Oscar at his giant castle to make a final stand against his tyranny. There's not too much I can say about this finale since it doesn't add much from a thematic point of view except for a bit at the very end, which I'll get to in a moment, but it's still incredibly entertaining and a masterclass of YouTube poop style editing that has become synonymous with the Schaffrillas name over the years. And of course, there's a specialized cover of I Need a Hero named I Need It Shiny by Elsie Lovelock that fits with the scene perfectly and overall just f***ing slaps. My favorite part of the finale has to be when James and Patrick team up at the end to send Oscar to the Shadow Realm, also known as Tamatoa's Mouth, because it's cathartic as hell to see these two brothers fight side by side after all this time. And also, Patrick's part here is truly iconic.
Hey, Oscar! You caused all this destruction just because you wanted to be a somebody. But don't you realize you were already a somebody?
I did?
Heck yeah, man! And that somebody is a huge dick! We play! Do you?
Make a wish, honey.
Fish dinner!
And thus, Oscar is defeated, and with him, so is the anti-theme that has been present in this entire special up until this point. In a weird way, Oscar is actually the Tamatoa of the Tamatoa special, because he's a vain, selfish asshole who only cares about destroying and then ruling the world so he can be seen as glorious on the outside. And for most of the special, he leads Patrick down the path to becoming just like him. Thankfully, as I've already explained, Patrick overcomes this mindset with the help of James and Chris, and that's why it makes so much sense that he's the one to deliver the finishing blow against Oscar. Of course, in the aftermath, he's still held accountable for his actions by being made to clean up the damage, but he's on the road to redemption because he's finally learned to appreciate who he is on the inside and stop seeking fame on the outside. Even Tamatoa has learned to reject external glory to an extent as he turns down the heart at Te Fiti, which is instead given back to Te Fiti herself, proving that vanity has truly lost and self-appreciation has prevailed. That is where the special ends, with James delivering a final speech about why Tamatoa means so much to him, and why no matter how society thinks of this quirky obsession, he will always prioritize how he feels on the inside to how the masses feel about him, hammering in that powerful theme one last time by encouraging his viewers to hold the same exact mindset. So yeah, honestly a pretty powerful and meaningful special underneath all the goofiness. I can't think of a better way James could have expressed his feelings toward the movie Moana, its themes, and most of all Tamatoa, than by expertly weaving it into a meta-narrative about his real-life, YouTube career, and relationships with his brother and his friends. Even a year and a half later, I can still feel the genuine emotions he put in oozing from the special, and as such it has cemented its place as one of my favorite videos on YouTube, and absolutely the magnum opus of Schaffrillas productions. It is the epitome of everything James's channel represents and everything I watch him for, and I legitimately could not be more happy that it exists, as the heart at its center is truly shiny. Most importantly of all though, none of this would have been possible without Patrick and Chris. I want you all to remember that. Not only were they monumental to the special, but to the Schaffrillas name as a whole, and in general, they were just amazing people who were taken from this world far too soon. Every day I think about them and lament on how tragic their sudden deaths were, and every day I wish dearly that they rest in peace. Furthermore, I wish nothing but the absolute best for James and his family, and although I doubt James will ever come across this video, I do want to address some of it to him directly. James, you are an inspiration to well over 1 million people, including myself. You are the person who got me into media analysis in the first place, which is something I plan to lean further into after having dabbled in it for the last 2 years. There's something almost magical about your videos and how you express your thoughts on the topics you discuss. It's hard to describe, but it's easy to see the blood, sweat, tears, and most of all the passion that goes into every single one. And it's a rare type of passion that I haven't been able to identify in a single other person in my life. I could not be more thankful to have discovered your channel and your content, and I'm sure many others feel the exact same way. Please never stop embracing and expressing who you are on the inside, because that's what makes you special, and don't you ever forget that. As for the rest of you, thanks for watching. As always, I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.